بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد طه الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. May Allah Ta'ala grant us all the sincerest of intentions, the ability to understand the religious knowledge and to get the reward in the hereafter for our good deeds. Thereafter, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in a hadith that is quite commonly known, Buniya al-Islamu ala khams, that the religion of Islam is built upon 5 important and fundamental matters. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Shahadati an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The first and the most important of them is testifying and believing that no one is God except Allah and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is his prophet and messenger. Wa iqamis salah. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam continued to say, regularly performing the 5 obligatory prayers. Wa ita is zakah. Likewise to give one's zakah. Wa sawmi Ramadan, fasting the month of Ramadan. Wa hajjil bayti man istata'a ilayhi sabila, and performing pilgrimage, Hajj, for whomever is able to safely make it to Mecca and back. And so in this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned the fundamental matters of Islam and the most important matters for the Muslims to follow. And so, as well as them being the great obligations that are upon the Muslims, Allah also revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam the statement, وَمَا تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبَّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا افْتَرَضْتُ عَلَيْهِ. In this hadith Qudsi, Allah revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam that the deed by which my slave gets the highest rank with me, the deed by which is most rewardable with Allah Ta'ala, is the one that Allah made an obligation upon the slave. So if we look at then the obligation of zakah, it involves then a person giving some of their wealth away. There are times and opportunities where people can donate to the mosque, give to the needy, give to the poor, give to the charity, build a well somewhere, build a hospital somewhere. These are all good deeds. But you will not get more reward for them than you would for paying your obligatory zakah. That is, as well as being an obligation to fulfill and being an enormous sin if one did not fulfill, there is also a huge amount of reward. More reward than a person would get for donating and giving charity elsewhere that would not be an obligation upon him. Therefore, it is important for a person to learn the rules of zakah, especially if they themselves own some wealth. If a person does not have any money at all to their name, right now they are not obligated to learn about zakah because the rules don't apply to him. It's like a person, if he has no intention to get married, right now he does not need to learn the rules of nikah and talaq. But if he wants to get married, he needs to learn what are the rules and the rights of the husband and the wife, and what's an obligation upon me to support and the like. Similarly then, for zakah, if a person happens to own some wealth, they need to learn then, is zakah due upon it? What do I need to have? How much of it? For how long, etc., for me to have zakah payable upon? And it's not something down to a person's opinion. Some people say, I feel like my situation is comfortable, I feel like I am well off, I feel like we live in a big house, therefore I should be giving zakah. That's not the consideration. Rather, the consideration is upon the ownership of certain items that the Prophet ﷺ specifically mentioned. That either you own specific animals, as was mentioned, the camels, goats, sheep and cows.
Chicken.
Other than that, if a person owns animals, just by owning them, no zakah is due. So a person has horses, person has chickens, hens, a person has other animals, zakah is not due upon them just for owning them. As for if a person had precious metals, what are the zakah that's due upon that gold and silver. Person doesn't say, I've got rubies, I've got diamonds, I've got gems. Yeah, they might be valuable, but zakah is not payable upon them just by owning them. Likewise, a person had certain crops. It's not what you decide, I have this type of farm or I have this type of land, for example, that which the religion mentioned in terms of wheat and barley and the like. And so also in the Hanafi school, what's mentioned is that if you are now using a currency in place of what was originally gold and silver coins, then zakah is also payable upon that as well. And so to know if it is payable or not, firstly, then the religion places something that we call a nisab, a minimum amount that you would need to first own for zakah to be an obligation upon that. So a certain amount of gold, approximately 86 grams of solid gold. In terms of silver, just under 600 grams of solid silver, pure silver. If a person owned that amount for what we call a lunar year, not the solar year, so like from Ramadan to Ramadan, Muharram to Muharram. If they own that amount or above it for a full lunar year, then at the end of it, they pay zakah upon that. So if a person says, I don't have gold, I don't have silver, but I have cash money. How much do I need to have then for zakah to be an obligation upon me? You look to see then, if I was to compare the value of the nisab of gold or the nisab of silver, how much would I need to have owned for to be zakah to be applicable? Gold is in the many thousands. Silver though, if we take as an example that it was 600 grams and it's 50p a gram, this would mean that the nisab of silver is 300 pounds. If I own, for example, 1,000 pounds, this is more than the nisab, more than the minimum amount I need. And I've had that money for a full lunar year. And at the end of the year, I have 2,000 pounds. That would mean now I need to pay zakah upon all of that money that I owned. How much then? They mention in the religion a 40th, as they say 2.5%. So for every 1,000 pounds, 25 pounds of zakah would need to be paid. You don't have to say, but I've got more money than that. 25 pounds is not much. I'm willing to give more than that. You are not allowed to do something as an obligation if it has not been made an obligation upon you. So a person, for example, can't come at Fajr time and say, I'm feeling energetic. I'm feeling like I've got a lot of desire to do more good deeds. Instead of 2 rak'ahs for Fajr, I'm going to pray 3 rak'ahs. It doesn't work. You can't add an obligation upon yourself. If you want to pray additional prayers before Fajr, you want to pray additional sunnah and nafil prayers during the day, you're welcome to do so. But not as the obligatory Fajr prayer. So a person can't say, I want to give more money as zakah. No. You give what's an obligation upon you as zakah. And if you want to give extra sadaqah, extra donation, extra charity, for example, then you can do so. You can't make something an obligation upon yourself that the religion of Islam did not. Other than that then, owning any items is not an obligation to pay zakah upon. So even if a person had 3 houses, he owns them. He lives in one, his father lives in another one, his son lives in a third one. It's fine. Zakah is not due upon that. Or he owns a house and the other house he gives out on rent. Is he buying and selling that house? No. Therefore, zakah is not an obligation. What does it mean then to have zakah on trade items? It means something that you purchase for an amount with the intention of doing what? Selling it to make a profit. So that you do what with the money? Buy more stock. You recycle the money. Buying and selling so that you make more money. This is what we call trading. If this is your business, then whatever you are trading in, zakah applies to it. Whether you're trading in buying and selling cars, houses, chairs, hens, whatever it might be, that you are now buying and selling with the intention of profit, that's where zakah is due. But just for owning a lot of things, a person having 10 cars, 5 houses, just by owning them, zakah is not an obligation upon him. Even if he says, but that means I have a lot. Okay, but you're not obligated. I want to donate, then go ahead and donate. You can give as much donation and sadaqah as you wish, but not in the form of zakah. So a person needs to know then what money and what wealth of theirs is zakah an obligation upon. Because if you don't learn, and zakah is an obligation upon it, and you don't pay it, this is an enormous sin. This is what they call a kabira, a major sin, because you missed out something which is fard upon you. Just like if a person missed out one of the fard prayers, they are sinful for that. So a person needs to learn, I have some money, my father died, my grandmother died, she left me some money. What do I do with it now? Do I need to pay zakah on it? How much, for example? All of this a person needs to learn themselves so they can make sure this obligation has been lifted from them. And inshallah, tomorrow in the next session, we're going to go through whom it is an obligation and only permissible to give the zakah to. Who deserves my zakah? If I've established that I'm obligated to pay it, who is it then that is a deserving recipient of zakah? Inshallah, in the coming lesson, that's what we will mention.